The room tilted sideways as I gripped the edge of my sister's dining table, watching the crystal wine glasses blur into doubles, then triples. My tongue felt thick and cottony, and the voices around me stretched into distorted echoes that bounced inside my skull like marbles in a tin can. This was the fourth family dinner in 2 months, where I'd felt like someone had replaced my bones with wet sand. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now, let me tell you about something that changed my life forever. My fingers fumbled with my purse strap as I pushed back from the table, the chair legs scraping against hardwood with a sound that made my teeth ache. The faces of my relatives swam before me, my sister Elena's concerned frown, my niece's wide eyes, my mother's hand reaching across the table. But it was my brother-in-law's expression that cut through the fog. Derek sat perfectly still, fork suspended halfway to his mouth, his jaw clenched tight as he watched me struggle to stand. "I need some air," I managed to say, the words slurring despite my efforts to control them. I stumbled toward the French doors leading to Elena's backyard, my shoulder colliding with the doorframe hard enough to send shooting pain down my arm. The cool October air hit my face like a slap, but it did nothing to clear the thickness in my head. I collapsed onto the patio steps, pressing my palms against the cold concrete, trying to anchor myself to something solid and real. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Heavy, male. The door clicked shut with a finality that made my stomach clench. I turned my head, each movement feeling like I was pushing through honey, and saw Derek standing there with his hands in his pockets. The outdoor lights cast shadows across his face, transforming his features into something unfamiliar and menacing. "You don't look so good, Claudia." His voice was flat, measured, completely devoid of the concern that should have been there. I tried to respond, but my mouth wouldn't form the words. Instead, I focused on his hands, how they remained perfectly steady as he walked closer, how his breathing stayed calm, and even while I fought to keep the world from spinning off its axis. He crouched down beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with something chemical and acrid that I couldn't place. "Every month, like clockwork, you come to these dinners." He spoke quietly, almost conversationally, as if commenting on the weather. "And every month, you leave feeling just a little bit worse." My brain struggled to process his words through the chemical haze. I watched his hand move to his jacket pocket, withdrawing a small amber bottle no bigger than my thumb. He held it up to the light, tilting it back and forth so the clear liquid inside caught the glow from the kitchen windows. The casual way he displayed it, like a trophy, like proof of something, sent ice water through my veins despite the warmth still radiating from inside the house. I forced my hand to move, reaching for the deck railing, my fingers closing around the wood with grip strength I didn't know I still possessed. The rough texture bit into my palm as I used it to drag myself backward, putting distance between us. My legs responded sluggishly, like they belonged to someone else, but the movement created precious inches of space. Derek watched this pathetic retreat with something resembling amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. He stood, brushing invisible dust from his knees with one hand, while the other kept that bottle raised like evidence at a trial. The moonlight made the liquid inside glow with an almost phosphorescent quality. "Started small," he continued, his voice maintaining that horrible conversational tone. "Just a few drops in your wine at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. You complained about being tired, remember? Blamed it on the turkey." My back hit the corner post of the deck, Splinters caught on my sweater as I used the vertical beam to haul myself upward. The world tilted dangerously, and I had to close my eyes against the spinning sensation. When I opened them again, Derek had moved closer, cutting off any path back to the door. Through the kitchen window behind him, I could see shapes moving. My sister Elena laughing at something. Her husband's brother standing in my way, while poison coursed through my system. Why? The word scraped out of my throat, raw and small. He pocketed the bottle with a casual gesture that made my stomach heave. His shoulders lifted in a shrug that carried too much rehearsed indifference. Elena's trust fund, the one your parents set up before they died. You're the executor until she turns 60. The pieces slammed together in my foggy brain. 5 more years. Elena would have full control in 5 more years. But until then, every major decision about that money required my signature, my approval. I gripped the post harder, my fingernails digging into the weathered wood as understanding crashed through the chemical haze. Inside the house, someone turned up the music. Frank Sinatra's voice drifted through the walls, muffled but recognizable. The sound of normalcy, of family gatherings and Sunday dinners, while I clung to a deck railing with my brother-in-law's confession hanging in the air between us. I pushed off from the post, using momentum more than strength, and stumbled toward the deck stairs. 3 steps down to the backyard. 3 steps that might as well have been a mountain in my current state. My foot found the first one, and I had to grab the handrail with both hands to keep from pitching forward. Derek's hand closed around my upper arm. His grip was firm, but not painful, controlling rather than brutal. He guided me back up the step with inexorable pressure, moving me like a piece of furniture being rearranged. The casual strength in that grip told me everything about how helpless I truly was right now. Can't have you falling down the stairs, he said, maneuvering me back onto the deck. That would look suspicious, don't you think? Especially after I've been so careful all this time. I wrenched my arm free with a strength I didn't know I still possessed. The sudden movement sent me careening sideways into the deck table, my hips slamming against the metal edge. The impact jolted through my body, sharp and clarifying. Pain cut through the fog better than any deep breath could. The patio door slid open behind us. Light spilled across the weathered boards, stretching our shadows long and distorted. I straightened, willing my legs to lock, to hold me upright without support. My hands found the table's edge, knuckles white against the dark metal. Elena stepped onto the deck carrying a wine bottle and 2 glasses. She'd changed from her work clothes into the cream cashmere sweater I'd given her last Christmas. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail that showed off the pearl earrings, also from me. Everything she wore, everything she owned, filtered through my authority over her inheritance. There you are. She set the glasses down with careful precision, the clink of crystal against metal too loud in the quiet. Mom, you look pale. Maybe you should sit down. I watched her pour the wine with steady hands. Red liquid filled both glasses to exactly the same level. She'd always been meticulous that way, measuring everything with mathematical precision. The trait that made her an excellent accountant. The trait that would make her a formidable executor in 5 years. Derek moved closer to his wife, his hand settling on the small of her back. The gesture looked protective, intimate, natural. I saw it differently now, the way he positioned himself between us, the slight pressure of his fingers against her sweater, guiding without seeming to guide. I need to leave. The words came out slurred but determined. I pushed away from the table, testing my balance. The deck tilted slightly, but I compensated, feet spreading wider for stability. Elena's forehead creased with concern. Real concern or practiced? How many times had I seen that exact expression across Sunday dinner tables, holiday gatherings, birthday celebrations? You can't drive like this. Stay here tonight. We'll make up the guest room. The guest room, upstairs, at the end of a long hallway, far from exits. I pictured myself trapped there, door closed, Derek standing in the hallway with another glass of something helpful for sleep. My stomach clenched. I fumbled in my jacket pocket for my phone. My fingers felt thick, clumsy against the smooth glass surface. The screen lit up, too bright, numbers swimming. I squinted, trying to focus enough to pull up a rideshare app. The icons blurred together, rearranging themselves every time I tried to tap one. Derek's hand appeared in my peripheral vision, reaching for the phone. I yanked it back against my chest, wrapping both arms around it like a child protecting a toy. The movement threw me off balance. I stumbled backward, my spine hitting the deck railing hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. "Let me help you with that." His voice carried just the right note of patience, of dealing with a difficult situation with grace. "You're in no condition to work a phone right now." I shook my head, the motion making the world swing sickeningly. Bile rose in my throat. I swallowed it down, tasting acid and the remnants of Elena's pot roast. How much of that gravy had he doctored? How many times had I complimented his cooking, his attention to seasoning, the way he always insisted on preparing my plate himself? Elena set down the wine bottle and moved toward me. She walked carefully, the way people approach frightened animals. Her heels clicked against the deck boards, each step measured and deliberate. "Mom, you're scaring me. Should I call an ambulance?" The question hung there, seemingly innocent. But I saw the glance she threw Derek, quick and questioning, asking permission, or asking for instruction. I forced my thumb to move across the phone screen. The rideshare app finally opened. I jabbed at the address field, but my finger hit 3 buttons at once. Nonsense letters filled the space. I deleted them, tried again. The simple act of typing my own address, a place I'd lived for 12 years, seemed impossibly complex. Derek stepped forward again, blocking the light from the house. His shadow fell across me, and I felt the temperature drop. Or maybe that was just my body shutting down, the drugs reaching deeper into my system with every passing minute. "Elena, go inside and get your mother's purse. She left it on the counter." He spoke without looking away from me. "And bring her coat. It's getting cold out here." She hesitated, her weight shifting between feet. For a moment, I thought she might question him, might ask why he was giving orders about my belongings. But then she nodded and disappeared into the house, the patio door sliding shut behind her with a soft thump. We were alone again. I managed to type my address on the 3rd try. The app showed available drivers, little car icons scattered across the map. I tapped the nearest one, my finger slipping twice before connecting. The confirmation screen appeared. 7 minutes away. 7 minutes alone on this deck with a man who'd just confessed to poisoning me repeatedly for months. I had to get off this deck. 7 minutes was too long. My legs trembled as I pushed myself away from the railing, using the wooden beam for support. Splinters bit into my palm, but the small pain helped ground me, gave me something to focus on besides the swimming sensation in my skull. Derek moved before I'd taken 2 steps. His hand closed around my upper arm, fingers digging into the soft flesh above my elbow. Not hard enough to leave immediate marks, but firm enough to stop me completely. He'd always been careful about that, knowing exactly how much force to use without crossing visible lines. "You're in no condition to go anywhere." His voice carried that same reasonable tone he used when explaining things to Elena's children, patient and immovable. "Let me drive you home. Your car's still here anyway." I yanked my arm, but my muscles responded sluggishly, like pulling against rubber bands instead of bone and sinew. He didn't even shift his weight. My phone nearly slipped from my other hand. I clutched it tighter, the case edges cutting into my fingers. 7 minutes, I managed to say. My tongue felt thick, the words emerging slurred. "Driver's coming." "Cancel it." He reached for my phone with his free hand. I twisted away, stumbling backward. My hip cracked against the deck chair, metal legs scraping across wood. The sound echoed too loud in my ears, distorted and prolonged. I caught myself on the chair's back, phone pressed against my chest like a talisman. The screen's light illuminated the gap between us, maybe 3 feet of space that felt infinite and non-existent at once. Through the patio door, I could see Elena moving through the kitchen. She had my purse now, was lifting my coat from the hook by the refrigerator. Her movements looked smooth, normal. The kitchen lights seemed impossibly bright compared to the deck's shadows, like watching a television show through a window. A show where everything appeared fine, where nothing was wrong. Derek followed my gaze, then stepped sideways, blocking my view. Blocking any view Elena might have of us? "You know what happens if you make a scene." His hand dropped from my arm, but he moved closer instead of retreating. Close enough that I smelled his cologne, something woody and expensive that Elena had bought him for Christmas. "Elena spent 3 hours making dinner tonight. Your sister's birthday is next week. We have Thanksgiving in a month." I pressed harder against the chair. The metal bit into my lower back, anchor points of pressure through my shirt. My heartbeat pounded in my throat, irregular and too fast. Or maybe too slow? I couldn't tell anymore. "All those dinners you think you'll miss?" He tilted his head, studying my face like a specimen. "All those family moments, birthday cakes and graduation parties and Sunday brunches. You really want to blow that up over some supplements?" "You said drugs." My voice came out barely above a whisper. "You said drugging." "Semantics." He waved his hand dismissively. "Supplements, medication, drugs, all the same thing, really. Point is, you needed help, and I provided it. You think anyone will believe I did something wrong? That I had bad intentions?" The patio door slid open. Elena emerged with my coat draped over one arm, my purse hanging from her shoulder. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes, my sister's eyes, scanned my face, the deck, the space between Derek and me. Calculating something, adding variables I couldn't see. "Found everything." She held out my belongings, but didn't move closer. "Derek, did you tell her about next weekend? The family photos?" He turned toward her, his body language shifting immediately. Shoulders relaxed, smile genuine. The transformation happened in a heartbeat. "Not yet. Claudia's not feeling well. We were just discussing how to get her home safely." Elena's gaze sharpened. She looked at my phone, still clutched against my chest. At the deck chair, digging into my back. At the way I swayed, even while standing still. Her lips pressed together into a thin line. "The rideshare will be here in 5 minutes," I said. Each word required concentration, pushing through molasses. "I'm waiting here." "That seems excessive." Elena finally stepped closer, offering the coat. "Derek can drive you. Your car?" "I'll get it tomorrow." I reached for the coat with my free hand, nearly dropped my phone in the process. Caught it against my stomach. My fingers refused to close properly around the fabric, so I just pulled it from her arm and let it hang loose over my shoulders. "I want the rideshare." Elena's jaw tightened. She glanced at Derek, and something passed between them. A silent conversation I couldn't quite read through the fog in my brain. Years of marriage had given them their own language, one that existed in micro-expressions and tiny gestures. Derek shrugged, spreading his hands in a gesture of surrender. "If that's what she wants, though I think it's wasteful when we're right here." My phone buzzed. The driver had arrived, a gray sedan pulling up to the curb in front of the house. I could see its headlights through the side yard, hear the engine idling. 3 minutes early. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees buckled. I pushed past Derek, aimed for the deck stairs. My foot hit the first step wrong, ankle rolling. I grabbed the railing with both hands, phone wedged between palm and wood. The world tilted sickeningly. Up became down became sideways. I focused on the car's taillights, used them as a fixed point while everything else spun. The wooden steps jarred my knees with each descent. 4 stairs felt like 40, each one requiring a calculated placement of feet I could barely feel. My hand squeezed the railings so hard splinters dug into my palm, but the pain registered as distant, happening to someone else's body. The driver's window rolled down as I stumbled across the lawn. A woman's face appeared. 40-something, tired eyes, turquoise earrings catching the streetlight. Her expression shifted from neutral to concerned as I lurched toward the back door. "You okay, hun?" She twisted in her seat, hand already reaching for her phone. "Fine." I yanked the door handle, nearly fell into the back seat. The upholstery smelled like artificial pine and old coffee. "Just need to go home." Behind me, footsteps crunched across the gravel driveway. Derek's voice carried through the night air, pitched louder than necessary. "Claudia, wait, your purse. You forgot your purse." I hadn't forgotten anything. My purse sat in my lap where I'd clutched it through the entire nightmare dinner. I looked down at the leather bag, ran my thumb over the brass clasp to confirm its solidity. Real, present, mine. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror, then at me. Her fingers hovered over her phone screen, uncertainty written across her features. "Do you need—" "Drive, please." I pulled the door shut, fumbled with the seat belt. The clip kept missing the buckle, metal scraping against plastic. Derek reached the car, rapped his knuckles against the window. His wedding ring made sharp tapping sounds against the glass. "Just open up for a second. Elena's grabbing some things for you. Medications you might need tonight." My stomach dropped. Medications. The word landed like a physical blow, confirming what I already knew, but hadn't fully processed. Not just tonight. How many dinners? How many family gatherings where I'd felt slightly off, attributed it to stress or age or not enough sleep? "Ma'am, I can't leave if there's a dispute." The driver's voice carried professional detachment, but her eyes kept darting between me and Derek. Her finger moved toward the door unlock button. "No dispute." I finally got the seatbelt clicked. "He's not family. Drive." Derek's face appeared in the window, close enough that his breath fogged the glass. His palm pressed flat against it, fingers spread wide. "You're not thinking clearly. Come back inside, sleep it off on the couch. We can talk in the morning when your head's straight." The driver's hand moved to the gear shift, hesitated. A long moment stretched between us while she made some internal calculation. The disheveled woman in her back seat versus the well-dressed man standing in a driveway that screamed upper-middle-class respectability. I leaned forward, grabbed the back of her seat. My fingers dug into the fabric. Drive now, or I'm calling 911 and telling them I'm being held against my will. Your choice. The transmission clunked into drive. Derek stepped back from the car, hands raised. Through the rear window, I watched him pull out his phone as we accelerated down the street. Elena appeared on the porch, illuminated by the motion sensor light, holding something small and orange. A prescription bottle. The driver took the first corner carefully, checking her mirrors every few seconds. You want to go to a hospital? Police station? Home. I rattled off my address, then slumped against the seat. The streetlights passed overhead in rhythmic intervals, each one creating patterns of light and shadow across my closed eyelids. My heart hammered against my ribs. Too fast, irregular, like it couldn't decide on a proper rhythm. The fog in my brain seemed to thicken rather than clear. Minutes dissolved into each other. I forced my eyes open, watched unfamiliar streets roll past. Wrong direction. We were heading west, not north, toward my neighborhood. This isn't... My tongue felt swollen. Where are you going? Following the GPS, hun. She pointed at the phone mounted on her dashboard. Says 22 minutes to your address. I squinted at the screen, tried to focus on the blue line. The numbers and street names slid around, refused to resolve into readable text. My phone buzzed in my pocket, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I didn't reach for it. The driver merged onto the highway. Headlights from other cars streaked past, each one leaving trails of color in my peripheral vision. I pressed my forehead against the cool window glass, concentrated on breathing. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. A technique my therapist had taught me years ago for anxiety attacks. This wasn't anxiety. This was something chemical, foreign, deliberately introduced into my system. By Derek, my sister's husband, the man who'd carved the Thanksgiving turkey last month, who'd hugged me at my mother's funeral, who'd helped me move furniture when I'd downsized apartments 3 years ago. The betrayal sat in my chest like a stone, cold and immovable. But underneath it, something else burned, a white-hot rage that cut through the drugged haze. He'd admitted it, actually said the words out loud, standing in his kitchen while his wife listened. How long? How many times? And Elena, her face when he'd spoken, that wasn't surprise. That was resignation, maybe even complicity. My phone buzzed again. I pulled it out, stared at the screen until the notifications came into focus. 7 missed calls. 4 from Derek, 3 from Elena. A text message preview appeared. We need to talk before you do something you'll regret. I held down the power button until the screen went black. The taxi pulled up to St. Vincent's emergency room entrance. I fumbled with my wallet, hands still trembling, pulled out 2 20s and pressed them into the driver's palm without waiting for change. The automatic doors whooshed open, and I stumbled into the fluorescent brightness. The waiting room hit me like a physical assault. Too bright, too loud, too many people. A child screaming somewhere to my left. The antiseptic smell mixed with body odor, and something else, something medicinal and sharp that made my stomach lurch again. I gripped the edge of the admissions desk, knuckles white against the fake wood laminate. I need help. Someone's been drugging me. The intake nurse looked up from her computer screen, her expression shifting from bored to alert in half a heartbeat. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back so tight it stretched the skin at her temples. Her name tag read, Beverly Martinez. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger right now? Is the person who drugged you here? No, I'm alone, but I need blood work, toxicology screening, whatever you can do before it's completely out of my system. The words came out steadier than I felt, I'd rehearse them in the taxi, forcing my drugged mind to organize thoughts into coherent sentences. Beverly stood, came around the desk, her hand gentle on my elbow. She guided me past the crowded waiting area, through a set of double doors into the treatment bay. The world tilted as we walked. I focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on the squeak of her rubber-soled shoes against linoleum. She settled me on a gurney behind a curtain patterned with blue geometric shapes that seemed to pulse and writhe. I looked away, fixed my gaze on the IV pole beside the bed instead. Beverly wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm, the Velcro loud in the small space. Heart rates elevated. Blood pressure's 145/95. How long ago were you drugged? About an hour, maybe 90 minutes. I ate dinner at my sister's house. Her husband put something in my food. Speaking it aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. My voice cracked on the last word. The cuff deflated with a hiss. Beverly made notes on a tablet, her stylus moving quickly across the screen. A doctor appeared through the curtain, tall, white, probably mid-40s with gray threading through his brown beard. His badge identified him as Dr. Philip Reeves. "Tell me everything you remember about tonight," he said, pulling up a wheeled stool. He sat, met my eyes directly. No judgment in his expression, just clinical focus. I walked him through it, the dinner invitation, the way the room had started spinning during dessert, Derek's confession in the kitchen. The words felt thick in my mouth, like speaking through cotton. Dr. Reeves listened without interrupting, his pen moving across his clipboard in quick, efficient strokes. "We'll run a comprehensive tox screen," he said when I finished. "Blood and urine. The most common substances used in these situations are benzodiazepines or sleep aids. Did you notice anything unusual about the taste of your food or drink?" I tried to remember. The chicken had been normal. The vegetables steamed the way Elena always made them. But the wine, there had been something slightly bitter in the wine, an aftertaste I'd attributed to the vintage. My glass had been poured from a different bottle than the one the rest of them shared. "The wine." He gave me a different wine. Dr. Reeves nodded, made another note. Beverly returned with a phlebotomy tray, alcohol swabs, and several color-coded vials. She tied a tourniquet around my upper arm, tapped the inside of my elbow to raise a vein. The needle stick was sharp and immediate, grounding me in my body. I watched my blood flow into the tubes. Purple top, red top, gray top. "I'm also going to recommend we contact the police," Dr. Reeves said quietly. "What you're describing is assault. Criminal poisoning." The words hung in the air between us. Assault. Criminal. My sister's husband. My niece's father. I thought about Thanksgiving, about Christmas, about 20 years of family gatherings. Then I thought about waking up in their guest room last spring with no memory of the previous evening. About the time 2 years ago when I'd gotten so dizzy at their summer barbecue, I'd fallen and bruised my ribs. How many times had he done this? How many times had I blamed my own tolerance, my own inability to handle a few drinks? "Yes," I said. "Call them." Beverly finished drawing blood, pressed gauze to my arm, secured it with medical tape. She helped me lie back on the gurney, adjusted the thin pillow under my head. The ceiling tiles above me were water-stained, a map of continents I couldn't name. My phone buzzed again in my jacket pocket. I didn't move to answer it. A uniformed officer arrived 20 minutes later. Female, black, around 40, with sharp eyes that cataloged everything. Officer Tamara Wright, according to her badge. She stood beside my gurney with a notepad, and I repeated my story for the third time. Each telling made it more surreal, like I was narrating someone else's trauma. "We'll need to collect evidence from your sister's house," Officer Wright said. "The wine bottle, any remaining food, Glasses? Has anyone else been present during these dinners? My sister, Elena Jenkins Foster. She was there tonight. She heard him admit it. Officer Wright's pen paused mid-stroke. And what was her reaction? I remembered Elena's face across that kitchen. The way she'd looked at her husband, then at me. Not shocked, not horrified, resigned. She told him to shut up, to stop talking. The implications of that settled over me like cold water. She knew. She's always known. The nausea hit me like a physical blow. I twisted to the side, dry heaving over the edge of the gurney, even though my stomach had nothing left to give. Officer Wright stepped back, her hand hovering near my shoulder, but not quite touching. The retching made my ribs scream where I'd bruised them at the barbecue, where Gregory had drugged me at the barbecue. I need to sit up, I managed. The horizontal position made everything worse. My head spun, the fluorescent lights above creating halos that pulsed with my heartbeat. Officer Wright helped me into a sitting position. My legs dangled off the gurney, feet not quite reaching the floor. Someone had removed my shoes. I couldn't remember when. The linoleum felt cold through my socks. Ms. Jenkins, I need you to focus for me. Officer Wright pulled a chair close, sat so we were at eye level. Your sister. Has she ever said anything that suggested she was aware of what her husband was doing? I pressed my palms against my thighs, trying to ground myself in something solid. Elena's voice echoed in my head from 6 months ago, maybe 8. We'd been folding laundry in her pristine living room, the same living room where I'd confronted Gregory tonight. She'd mentioned that maybe I should eat before coming to dinner next time, that maybe I was having such strong reactions because I'd skipped lunch. Like it was my fault. Like my body's rebellion against being poisoned was a personal failing I needed to manage better. She made excuses, I said. Every time I got sick, every time I felt wrong. She always had a reason that wasn't what it actually was. Officer Wright wrote something in her notepad. Her pen made scratching sounds that seemed too loud in the small treatment bay. Behind the curtain, someone moaned. A monitor beeped steadily, marking out someone else's functioning heart rate. My phone buzzed again. This time, I pulled it from my pocket, fingers clumsy. 12 missed calls. 7 from Elena, 5 from a number I didn't recognize. 3 text messages, all from my sister. The preview lines were visible without unlocking the screen. Claudia, please. He didn't mean. You're destroying our family. I held the phone out to Officer Wright. She photographed the screen with her own device, the flash making me wince. Then she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe. Or recognition of something she'd seen too many times before. Don't respond to any of these, she said, and don't delete them. We'll need everything. The curtain pulled back sharply. A doctor entered, younger than me with exhausted eyes and a tablet tucked under one arm. He glanced at Officer Wright, then at me, making rapid assessments I couldn't follow. Blood work shows elevated levels of benzodiazepines, he said, his voice clipped and efficient. Consistent with rohypnol, or a similar sedative. Your liver enzymes are also elevated, which suggests repeated exposure over time. He tapped something on his tablet. I'm recommending admission for observation. At minimum, 12 hours. The words hit me in fragments. Rohypnol, repeated exposure, 12 hours. I tried to process what he was saying, but my brain felt wrapped in cotton. Gregory had been giving me date rape drugs, for months, maybe longer, at family dinners, at celebrations, at my own niece's graduation party last spring when I'd gotten so confused I'd walked into the wrong bathroom. I need to call my daughter. I heard myself say. The words came from somewhere distant. "After we finish here," Officer Wright said. She stood, addressed the doctor. "This is an active criminal investigation. I'll need copies of all test results, and the patient needs to be isolated from family members who may be involved." The doctor nodded, made notes on his tablet. My phone buzzed again in my hand. Elena's name lit up the screen. I watched it vibrate, felt the movement against my palm, but couldn't make myself answer. The buzzing stopped, started again immediately. "Turn it off," Officer Wright suggested gently. I powered down the phone. The screen went dark, and the absence of light felt like a small mercy. My hands were shaking badly now, tremors running from fingertips to elbows. Shock, probably, or my body finally processing what had been done to it, over and over, while I blamed myself for being weak. The doctor left. Officer Wright excused herself to make calls, coordinate whatever needed coordinating. I sat alone on the gurney in the small curtained space. An IV drip bag hung beside me, clear fluid running into my arm through a needle I couldn't feel. Someone was crying 2 bays over. A baby, maybe, or someone whose pain was beyond words. I looked at my hands, still shaking, veins visible under the skin, age spots I'd only recently started noticing. These hands had signed paperwork without reading it carefully enough. Had accepted wine glasses from Gregory at dinner after dinner. Had gripped bathroom sinks while I vomited. Gripped furniture while rooms spun. Gripped Elena's shoulders while apologizing for ruining another evening with my inexplicable reactions. I discharged myself against medical advice 3 hours later. Officer Wright tried to argue, but I signed the papers with hands that had steadied enough to make my signature recognizable. The hospital wanted to keep me overnight for observation. They wanted more tests, more monitoring, more evidence collection. But Gregory would know by now that I hadn't come home. Elena would have called him, frantic with worry, or perhaps something else entirely. The parking garage was cold, concrete stained with oil and old rain. My car sat where I'd left it 2 days ago, before the family barbecue that had sent me here. I'd driven myself then, thank God. Keys were still in my purse, though Officer Wright had returned it looking more worn than I remembered. I drove to Gregory and Elena's house with the windows down, November air sharp enough to keep me alert. My mind was clear in a way it hadn't been for months, maybe years. Pieces were assembling themselves into patterns I should have recognized sooner. The timing of my symptoms. The way they only appeared at family gatherings. How Elena always seemed anxious until I'd finished whatever drink Gregory handed me. Their street was dark, except for porch lights and the blue glow of televisions through curtains. I parked 3 houses down, killed the engine, and sat watching. Lights blazed in every window of their 2-story colonial. Shadows moved behind the sheer curtains in the living room. 2 figures, both tall, Gregory and someone else. I waited, the detective part of my brain, the part that had made me good at my job before I'd started missing work, losing time, forgetting important meetings, cataloged everything. Gregory's truck in the driveway, Elena's sedan beside it. A third vehicle, a black SUV I didn't recognize, parked at the curb. My phone powered back on with a series of vibrations. 37 missed calls, 23 text messages. I scrolled through without reading them properly. Elena's name dominated the list. Gregory had called twice. There were messages from my actual sister, Elena, asking if I was okay because Elena had called her crying. The front door of the house opened. Light spilled onto the porch. Gregory emerged first, pulling on a jacket, moving with the jerky quickness of someone agitated. A man followed him out, younger, fit, carrying a briefcase that suggested lawyer rather than friend. They stood on the porch talking. The lawyer gestured, sharp movements of someone explaining consequences. Gregory's shoulders hunched forward, head shaking in what might have been denial or disbelief. I got out of my car. The dome light didn't come on. I'd disabled it years ago when I worked late shifts and didn't want to announce my arrival home. My legs felt uncertain beneath me, but I walked anyway. Each step on the sidewalk sounded too loud in the quiet neighborhood. A dog barked somewhere. A car alarm chirped as someone locked their vehicle. Gregory saw me when I reached the edge of his property. His face went through several expressions: surprise, fear, something that might have been calculation. The lawyer stopped mid-sentence, turned to follow Gregory's stare. "Claudia?" Gregory's voice cracked on my name. "Jesus Christ, where have you been? Elena's been worried sick." I kept walking up the driveway. The concrete was cracked, weeds pushing through. Elena always complained about it, wanted it repaved. My boots found every uneven surface. "The hospital called," the lawyer said, stepping slightly in front of Gregory. His stance was protective but professional. "You shouldn't be here, Mrs. Jenkins. You're not well." "I'm extremely well." My voice came out steady, cold, clearer than I've been in 18 months. Gregory moved around the lawyer. His hands came up, palms out, the universal gesture of placation. "Look, I know what they probably told you, but there's been a misunderstanding. The medication I gave you—" "Medication." The word felt sharp in my mouth. "Is that what we're calling it?" The front door opened again. Elena stood in the doorway, backlit by the hallway chandelier. Her hand was pressed to her mouth, eyes wide. She'd been crying. I could see that even from the driveway. Mascara smudged beneath her lower lashes. Her other hand gripped the doorframe like it was the only thing holding her upright. I walked past Gregory, past the lawyer whose hand came out to stop me, then dropped when I stared at him. The porch steps were familiar beneath my feet. I'd climbed them hundreds of times, for birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners, impromptu visits that Elena insisted on. Always welcomed with wine, with food, with Gregory's easy smile and Elena's tight hugs that lasted just seconds too long. "Don't!" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, don't do this." "Do what?" I stopped 2 feet from her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes, the way her pupils dilated. "Talk about how your husband has been poisoning me? How he just admitted it?" Behind me, Gregory made a sound like he'd been punched. The lawyer started speaking in low, urgent tones about not saying anything further, about rights and legal representation. Elena stepped back into the house. I followed. The entryway was exactly as I remembered. Cream walls, hardwood floors, the console table with family photos arranged just so. My own face smiled from several of the frames, caught in moments I barely remembered now. Had I been drugged in those photos? Which celebrations had been real, and which had I experienced through a chemical fog? The living room opened to my right. Gregory's desk sat in the corner, laptop closed, papers stacked in neat piles. I walked to it. Elena made a noise behind me, somewhere between a gasp and a sob. My hands found the desk drawers, pulled, locked. Of course they were locked. "Claudia, stop!" Gregory was in the doorway now, the lawyer beside him. "You can't just—" I picked up a ceramic lamp from the desk, one of Elena's expensive pieces, bought on a trip to Italy she'd told me about in exhaustive detail. The base was heavy, solid. I raised it and brought it down on the desk drawer. Wood splintered. The sound was enormous in the quiet house, a crack like a gunshot. Elena screamed. The lamp's base shattered, pieces scattering across the floor. The drawer hung at an angle, lock mechanism destroyed. I reached in, pulled out file folders. My hands were steady now, adrenaline burning through any remaining weakness. The first folder held bank statements. Joint account, Gregory and Elena's names on top. I scanned the amounts, the regular deposits and withdrawals. Nothing obviously incriminating. The second folder had insurance documents. Life insurance. I found my name, found the policy Elena and I had taken out together years ago. Sister-in-laws protecting each other's interests. The beneficiary had been changed. Not to Elena, my actual blood relative, to Elena. Gregory lunged for me. I saw him move, felt his hands grab for the folder. We struggled, papers flying. His fingers dug into my wrist, trying to make me drop the documents. I twisted, used a move I'd learned in a self-defense class I'd taken before my symptoms started making it impossible to trust my own balance. Gregory stumbled, hit the edge of the desk, went down hard on one knee. The lawyer was on his phone, calling someone. Police, probably. Let him. Officer Wright would love this. Elena rushed forward, tried to grab the papers now scattered across the floor. I kicked them away from her reaching hands, felt a savage satisfaction when she cried out in frustration. This woman, who'd called herself my sister, who'd invited me into her home over and over, watched me deteriorate, held my hair while I vomited into her expensive toilets. How long? My voice didn't sound like mine. How long were you planning to keep going? Elena's face crumpled, real tears now, not the careful crying she'd displayed in the doorway. It wasn't supposed to, we just needed… Elena, shut up. Gregory was standing again, face flushed red. Don't say another word. But Elena was breaking, I could see it. Her hands twisted together, knuckles white. We're drowning financially. The business failed. We were going to lose everything. We thought if you were unstable enough, if you couldn't work, the disability insurance. The realization hit like cold water. You wanted me declared incompetent. Gregory's jaw clenched so hard I heard his teeth grind. The lawyer had his hand on Gregory's arm, was pulling him backward, still talking urgently into his phone. I gathered the scattered papers, stuffed them back into the folder. My legs felt weak again, shock and adrenaline warring in my system. But I held myself upright, held the evidence against my chest like armor. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Red and blue lights began to paint the walls through the front windows. Elena sank onto the couch, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. Gregory stood frozen, watching his world collapse with the careful attention of someone witnessing a car accident in slow motion. I walked to the door, opened it to the flashing lights now filling the driveway. Officer Wright was getting out of the lead vehicle, other officers emerging from cars behind her. The lawyer rushed out to meet them, already talking, hands moving expressively. The cold air hit my face. I stood on the threshold between the warm house and the November night, between the family that had tried to destroy me and whatever came next. My hands clutched the folder of evidence hard enough to crumple the pages. Officer Wright was walking toward me, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes showing something like relief. Behind her, more officers were approaching the house. Gregory would be arrested tonight. Elena too, probably. The machinery of justice was grinding into motion, slow and inexorable. I stepped out onto the porch. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Inside, Elena was still crying. The sound followed me down the steps, across the driveway, toward the waiting police and the cold truth of what my family had done. Story block 910. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a harsh white glow that made my eyes ache. I sat in a small conference room, the folder of evidence spread across the scarred wooden table. My hands still trembled slightly as I pointed to each document, each pill bottle, each carefully annotated calendar entry marking the dinners where I'd felt sick afterward. Officer Wright recorded everything with a digital device, her fingers flying across the screen. A detective whose badge read Martinez asked questions in a calm, methodical voice, building the case piece by piece. The lawyer who'd helped me, Thomas Brennan, I'd finally learned his name, sat beside me, occasionally interjecting clarifications about chain of custody and legal procedures. "The medical records are crucial," Detective Martinez said, tapping a lab report. "Your doctor ran a comprehensive toxicology panel 3 weeks ago?" "Yes, after I started keeping track, after I realized it wasn't just in my head." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "The results showed benzodiazepines. I don't have a prescription for those." Martinez nodded, making notes on his tablet. The room felt too small, the air too warm despite the November cold outside. Through the window, I could see another patrol car arriving. Gregory would be in one of these rooms soon, giving his statement, or refusing to. Either way, the evidence would speak for itself. Wright looked up from her recording. "We've executed the search warrant at your brother-in-law's residence. The team found medications matching what you've documented, Xanax, Ativan, several others, hidden in his home office." The validation should have felt like victory. Instead, it settled in my chest like lead, heavy and cold. This was my family, my sister's husband, the man who'd carved Thanksgiving turkeys and handed out birthday presents and smiled across countless dinner tables while systematically poisoning me. Why? The word escaped before I could stop it. Martinez set down his tablet. His eyes, dark and tired, met mine with unexpected gentleness. "We'll find out. But Mrs. Jenkins, in cases like this, the why often doesn't make sense. Control, resentment, psychological issues, none of it will seem proportionate to what he did." I nodded, swallowing hard. The room's fluorescent lights flickered once, twice. Someone walked past in the hallway outside, their footsteps echoing on linoleum. Wright offered me water from a plastic bottle. I drank, the cold liquid steadying something inside me. "Your sister is claiming ignorance," Wright said carefully. "Says she had no knowledge of his actions." "Do you believe her?" Wright's expression remained neutral. "We're investigating all angles, but obstruction charges may apply regardless, given her initial attempts to prevent your departure tonight." The conference room door opened. A uniformed officer leaned in, catching Martinez's attention. They spoke in low voices, too quiet for me to hear clearly. Martinez's eyebrows rose. He stepped outside, leaving the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, I caught fragments of conversation. Something about additional evidence, about medical records from years back, about a pattern. My stomach clenched. Years back. How long had this been happening? The dizzy spells I'd attributed to menopause, the brain fog I'd blamed on stress, the inexplicable fatigue that had nearly cost me my job last spring. All of it suddenly suspect, all of it potentially connected to Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings and family barbecues where Gregory had always been so attentive, so eager to serve my plate, to refill my glass. Martinez returned, his expression grimmer. "Mrs. Jenkins, we need to expand the timeline. Your medical history shows symptoms consistent with intermittent benzodiazepine exposure going back at least 2 years." The room tilted. I gripped the table edge, knuckles whitening. 2 years. 24 months of family dinners, of trusting my sister's husband, of accepting food and drink from someone who was slowly, methodically destroying my health, my career, my sense of reality. "There's more," Martinez continued, settling back into his chair. "We're checking prescription databases. If he's been obtaining these medications illegally, there will be a trail. Forged prescriptions, online purchases, possibly theft from medical facilities." Thomas leaned forward. "This strengthens the case considerably, shows premeditation, sustained criminal intent." I barely heard him. My mind was reeling backward through memories now tainted with suspicion. The retirement party where I'd felt so confused, I'd called an Uber instead of driving. The Christmas dinner where I'd fallen asleep on Elena's couch, waking hours later with no memory of the afternoon. The birthday celebration where I'd insisted I was fine, absolutely fine, while my hands shook too badly to cut my own cake. Gregory had been there for all of it, smiling, concerned, suggesting I see a doctor, maybe consider early retirement, perhaps acknowledge I wasn't as young as I used to be. Wright was watching me carefully. "Do you need a break?" I shook my head. The trembling in my hands had stopped, replaced by something harder, colder. Rage, maybe, or determination. The evidence was scattered before me like puzzle pieces finally forming a complete picture, one far worse than I'd initially understood. "I want to see this through," I said. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes." Martinez nodded, respect flickering across his tired features. "Then let's continue. Walk me through every incident you can remember, starting from the beginning." To Block 1010. The morning sun cut through the windows of my new apartment, a fifth-floor walk-up in a converted warehouse that smelled of fresh paint and possibility. I stretched against the kitchen counter, watching steam rise from my coffee mug. 6 months had carved away the fog that used to cloud my mornings, leaving everything sharp and clear. My phone buzzed, a text from Detective Martinez. "Sentencing today, 2 p.m. Thought you'd want to know." I set the phone down and returned to my canvas. The painting was nearly finished. Bold strokes of crimson and gold depicting a woman rising from shadows into light. My hands moved steadily across the surface. No tremors, no hesitation. The art classes I'd enrolled in had awakened something I'd buried decades ago beneath practical concerns and family obligations. The courtroom smelled of old wood and recycled air. I took my seat in the gallery, spine straight, hands folded in my lap. Gregory sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, shoulders hunched, looking smaller than I remembered. Elena wasn't there. We'd spoken only once since the trial. A brief, painful conversation where she'd tried to apologize for not seeing, not knowing, not protecting me from her own husband. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The bailiff's voice echoed off the high ceilings as proceedings began. Gregory's attorney made his final plea, talked about mental health struggles, family pressures, a good man who'd made terrible mistakes. I watched the back of Gregory's head, remembering how he'd smiled while poisoning me, how he'd suggested that third helping of dessert, that extra glass of wine, knowing the drugs would hit harder on a full stomach. The toxicology reports had been devastating. Benzodiazepines mixed with antihistamines, carefully calibrated to cause confusion without triggering obvious alarm. He'd been dosing me for nearly 18 months, slowly escalating as my body built tolerance. The goal had been simple: make me appear mentally incompetent so Elena could petition for conservatorship, gaining access to the $340,000 in retirement accounts and property I'd accumulated through decades of careful planning. The judge spoke. Her voice was measured, cold. The systematic drugging of a family member represents a profound betrayal of trust. This was not impulsive. This was calculated, sustained, and designed to strip the victim of autonomy and assets. Gregory's shoulders shook. I felt nothing. 15 years in state prison. Eligibility for parole after 10. The gavel cracked like thunder. Guards moved forward. Gregory turned slightly, and our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I didn't look away, didn't smile, didn't cry. Just held his gaze until the guards led him through the side door. Outside, the afternoon sun felt warm against my face. I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar. Therapy session at 4. Dinner with my book club at 7. A group of women I'd met at the community center. Friends who knew nothing about my past except that I was building something new. My car was parked 3 blocks away. I walked slowly, taking in the details of the neighborhood. A florist arranging buckets of sunflowers. A teenager teaching his younger brother to skateboard. A dog walker managing 6 leashes with practiced ease. Life happening everywhere, ordinary and beautiful. The apartment welcomed me back with golden light streaming through the windows. I changed into paint-stained jeans and returned to my canvas. The woman in the painting had my face now. I'd added the final details while waiting for the sentencing. Her eyes looked forward, not back. My phone rang. Detective Wright's name appeared on the screen. "Just wanted to check in," she said. "See how you're holding up." "I'm good, really good, actually." "You sound it." A pause. "You did everything right, you know. Trusting your instincts. Fighting back. A lot of people don't." I looked around my apartment, the walls covered with my artwork, the bookshelves filled with volumes I was actually reading, the meditation cushion by the window where I started each morning. I'm grateful I did. After we hung up, I returned to the painting. Added a few final touches. Highlights in the rising sun, depth in the shadows below. Then I stepped back and really looked at what I'd created. 6 months ago, I couldn't have imagined this. Couldn't have pictured myself free, clear-headed, building a life on my own terms. The doorbell rang. My neighbor from across the hall stood in the corridor, holding a casserole dish. "Thought you might want some dinner," she said. "No pressure, just being friendly." I took the dish, warmth seeping through the ceramic into my palms. "Thank you. That's really kind. We're having game night Friday if you're interested. Nothing fancy, just cards and conversation." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. After she left, I set the casserole on the counter and walked to the window. The city spread out below, full of people living their lives, fighting their battles, surviving their own wars. I was one of them now, not a victim, not a cautionary tale, but a woman who'd faced darkness and chosen to walk back into the light. My reflection looked back at me from the glass. Strong, clear-eyed, free. Tomorrow I'd start a new painting, maybe take that pottery class I'd been considering. Call my cousin in Atlanta, the one who'd been so supportive during the trial. Keep building this life piece by piece, day by day, with no one drugging my food or stealing my future. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. I watched until the last light faded, then turned back to my apartment, my space, my sanctuary, my new beginning. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.